Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Retro Futurist podcast. I'm your host, Optimus. Tonight, I have a very, very, very special guest. He is a legend, and he's amazing, and he's a great friend. We have the awesome, amazing host of Ruminations Radio Network, Ruminations from the Red Rooms himself, Mitch Proctor.
Dude, hi, thanks. I'm not going
Sometimes
to
he
come
goes
back.
by Cyber Mitch.
Cyber Mitch tonight. Yes.
I got Mitch on. We were talking about some topics in the retro futurist world. Futurism, cyberpunk, it all kind of runs together. And we talked about The Fifth Element and how we both really enjoyed that film. So we took a little side detour and we both watched the movie, and we're here to talk about it and maybe see if we can open some other people's minds up to this great film. Most people that are listening to this probably have watched it. If you haven't watched it, there's going to be crazy amounts of spoilers.
Yes.
You might want to watch it first, then come back and listen to the episode. But anyway, Mitch, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. I'm really excited to do this with you, and thanks so much for having me. I'm stoked. I love this movie. I'm really excited to talk about it with you.
Yeah, I was really really excited that you when I asked you if you wanted to come on the show, if you had any things you wanted to talk about, and you brought this like you're like, let me think about it, and then a little bit later you're like, oh, Fifth Element. I was like, yes, let's do it. I love that movie. I haven't watched it in a while, and I needed a good reason to watch it. And the other day I had that perfect opportunity where nobody was home and I could crank up the surround sound and watch it the right way, because that movie has really good sound, especially if you have the second gen Blu-ray or the latest 4K that has the Atmos on it. It sounds great.
I was really worried when I mentioned it that it might not fit in. Like, it was just kind of like a almost subliminal one that came up to me. But then as going back to it, I think I found more things that really fit with the retro futurist culture.
Yeah, I think so. Part of my vision with this, with retro futurist culture, is, we're talking about art as a message to kind of wake people up to humanity's downfall. And
yeah,
as a species, we tend to hurt each other a lot, and a lot of the themes of the things we're going to talk about on this podcast are shows, movies, books where that's happening. And the reason it's all out there is there's a lot of us that want to see that stop, or maybe slow it down, or maybe just get people to think a little bit like, maybe we shouldn't do this.
Maybe we could be better.
Maybe we could be better. It makes for a hell of an entertainment, though.
Yeah.
So what we got lined up today, The Fifth Element, a film by Luc Besson. He is a great director. I have not seen all of his movies, but there's quite a few of his movies, and especially from this era, that I just love. Like, I love the original La Femme Nikita.
Mm-hmm.
His movie, I love Leon the Professional.
Yes.
I love The Fifth Element. There was another one from that era that I really loved too. So many. I mean, his early career was just amazing, and I'm not saying he's not still killing it out there, but as you age, your style changes, and as we age, our appreciation for things is different, right?
Sure.
So Nikita, Leon, Fifth Element was great. He did The Messenger Story of Joan Arc. Yeah, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it.
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. That was just right after this, though, wasn't it? Right after.
Yeah.
Had he and Mila were already together at that point?
Yeah, but they weren't together very long.
Huh. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And
I have not seen Lucy yet.
You gotta
I need to see that one.
Yeah.
I did see Valerian and A City of a Thousand Planets, and I liked it, but I had some issues with that I'm not going to talk about here.
Sure. Saw it, and I'm with you.
But mostly because I want to talk about how much I love The Fifth Element.
Yes.
So, Fifth Element what was your first? I mean, it was 1997. This was right before Matrix, right before Star Wars comes back. I would say this is like probably the first really big sci-fi movie in a while, maybe since Independence Day, um,
What was Independence Day? 96? Some
something like
it
that.
kind of started to bring
95,
sight. Yeah, 95, 95.
94, 95. I just mean like I just remember going like, "Whoa, cool! Like something big." Maybe Alien
Yeah.
4 was right before Fifth
Mm,
Element, but I didn't really like that one either. um, and I gotta say, when I first saw the poster and the previews, I wasn't exactly super excited. I don't know why. I think I was kind of, I'm not gonna lie, I was in a straight up like movie art snob era. So I'm not gonna lie.
hey man, we go through those phases. Everyone's gone through it.
Right? But when I finally saw the movie, it really won me over. Um, and I think for me, it was because of the feel of like a live action version of the magazine Heavy Metal, which in
Yeah.
France was Metal Hurlant, which is where a lot of this was based off of. Luc Besson, as a kid, loved that magazine, and it screams it when you watch the movie.
Yeah. I think I when I saw it, I think the initial impression of like the trailers, maybe it was the movie posters, it didn't grab me either right off the bat. But when I saw it at the theater that was on Grant in Tucson, over there on Grant next to the I-10. Remember that theater?
Yep, that's the one I saw that too.
Yeah, that's
In
where I saw
DTS.
it. It was high speed, but yeah, but immediately upon watching it, I was really enthralled. I was like, wow. It had been a while since I'd seen something quite so imaginative and so bold. I really, really had a great time.
Yeah, I remember just yeah, I had a blast, and it was just a fun ride.
Didn't do
Um,
too well in the States though, I think, or like really, like didn't really hit big box office wise until later, just making money on video.
I think it really blew up on DVD. That
Yeah.
was right. It literally dropped like the year DVD players hit the market.
Oh.
And the DVD player, I got my first DVD player in 98. Fifth Element came out in 97. I got my
Yeah.
first DVD player in 98. And I want to say Fifth Element was probably one of the first 10 discs I got. And the
Nice.
first DVD release of it wasn't that great. They did only because, new tech.
Yeah.
The Super Bit version that came later was a lot nicer, and I upgraded to that. But yeah, it's funny how when you get a new video format, sometimes, at least at that time, um, and the same thing happened with Blu-ray. It's funny. Blu-ray first came out. Fifth Element was one of the first Blu-rays, but it also suffered from being one of the first
Yeah.
Blu-rays on release. And the very first version of the Blu-ray was so bad that Sony was replacing them for free with a better version.
Oh wow. I didn't know.
I have the second version of the Blu-ray that has the Dolby True HD
Mm-hmm.
sound, and then there was a third version which is the 4K UHD and Blu-ray that has Atmos on
That's the one I
it.
just got.
Yeah, yeah, that one's really good too. I went and got the True HD one when I upgraded to Blu-ray, because I remember reading when the Blu-ray first came out that the image was really like, it didn't look much better than the Super Bit. I saw screenshots of the Super Bit DVD versus the first version of the Blu-ray, and it was hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
And that's because when Blu-ray first came out, there was a lot of learning how to encode that video format correctly, because it was a different animal compared to DVD. But a lot of the studios were trying to treat it like DVD, and it didn't work the same way.
The sci-fi always seems to lead the way when it comes to new formats. It's like a great place to kind of showcase those
Yeah,
new formats, though.
there's another video that kind of leads formats, but we'll just leave that out of this for
Okay.
now.
But back to the film.
No, yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're right. I mean, if you look at like VHS really took off when like Terminator 1 or something hit VHS, and that's
Yeah.
when the sales of VHS shot up like crazy.
Hmm.
So, um when you release a good movie that people like to watch again in the highest quality they can get at the time, you see it you see it push the market. Speaking of which, we're definitely going to have a Terminator episode. It's going to be the Optimus version of the Terminator timeline, though, which is very, very truncated. It's really only two movies. Um,
Okay.
anyway, so back to Fifth Element. So yeah, when I first saw it, it was like, wow, that was nuts. And I think I went and saw it again like a week later
Nice.
at the theater, and like I took my mom to check it out, and it's funny because she doesn't. She was like, I don't really like Bruce Willis, but she really liked the movie.
Huh.
Um, and
Nothing
yeah,
like McLean, huh? Because he was like McLean in space in this.
kind of. I mean, yeah, I had forgotten that there's that little. There's so many. It's the movie's just layered with so much stuff, and it
Yeah.
moves kind of fast in the beginning that it's almost like Ferris Bueller. If you blink, you're gonna miss it.
Uh-huh.
Um, the movie starts, and it's well, the opening scene, right? We're in 1917 in Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this guy's trying to transcribe some runes and some pyramid-looking structure, and it's about a warrior that will save the world against darkness. And he's transcribing this, and all of a sudden, we have a giant spaceship show up.
I think that like right off the bat, that like is built in retro future. When you have a sci-fi movie that starts in 1914, 1917, like
Dude, 100%
built in,
agreed.
built
Yeah,
in.
no, there's at this point we've already crossed two timelines
Yeah.
we're in, and it just gets better from there. The best part is we have Jason Priestley. No,
Luke
no,
Perry.
Luke Perry. I got confused with the the actors from that show.
You can say it. 90210.
90210. I couldn't remember what it was called. Yeah, we got Luke Perry in there, and we've got the guy that plays Ian Holmes, who
Yeah.
plays frickin' Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah. Rest in
Um,
peace.
yeah, he's great in this movie too.
Yeah.
And they're transcribing these runes. Giant spaceship shows up. These aliens come, and he's trying to read this puzzle, and they come, and the aliens, he is supposed to help safeguard the Earth and teach this ritual to his apprentice about how to prepare Earth for the warrior when they need it. And the aliens say, we don't have time. We have to get the stones. And they come and open the door, and they get the stones out, but they leave him the key. Um,
We'll be back later.
we'll be back. Right. And that's where the movie kicks off. And then we fast forward 300 something years.
Can I ask
The
you a
time
quick
is
question about
not,
that though? Before
yeah.
you, they say war is coming. Now, is that when they're in the when they open up the door and they say we got to get the stones, we're rolling? Was that in reference to war on Earth and the stones weren't safe there because World War One was on its way, World War Two?
Dude,
That
that
they
is a good question. I didn't even think of that. When they said war is coming, I thought they meant like
for
war
them?
with another alien species with
Yeah.
the those almost toad face looking guys, the Melkellians. What are they called?
Oh, I don't know what those guys are called. The Mondoshawans are the good guy ones that
Yeah,
look like they're from BioShock or something.
yeah, yeah. That's an you know what, and that, I mean, what's the timeline? I'm gonna have to look this up. What is the timeline of World War One? Because
I just thought that that was
I
kind of what they were doing was keeping them safe, and then because the archaeologist guy asked them, it's like, "Are you German?" And they're like,
Yeah,
"Mm."
that's true because the Nazis or the Germans at the time weren't the Nazis yet; they were just the Germans.
Yeah.
So World War One officially was July 28th, 1914 to November 11th,
Uh,
1918. So the war was almost over at the time. Maybe it was like a galactic
hmm.
civil war.
Okay.
Either way, we fast forward, we go 300 years, and oh, you know what? It says in 1914. Maybe you're right. The Mondo Schwans meet their human contact, the only weapon capable of defeating a great evil which appears every 5,000 years. They promise to return the weapon before the evil's great emergence. And then in 2263, the great evil appears, which is only about 250 years later, 350
Oh,
years later. Um, and that's where our movie starts. And we see this giant sphere. It's a great way to depict, I felt, like evil in a form that you can't, it's not tangible,
sure.
right?
That's like the ultimate cosmic evil.
Yeah, there's no reasoning with this thing.
Yeah.
It's just like a force. And the world united, government tries to fire weapons at it. That doesn't work.
That just makes it angry.
Just makes it angry. And then I'm going to say their names wrong again. The Mondoshawan are coming to Earth with the stones. They know that the evil's there. They're coming to help us, and they get attacked.
By the frog face aliens.
Yeah, and they're working for Jean Emmanuel Zorg, who's working for the Great Evil, and that's Gary Oldman's character, right? And he plays the perfect like evil corporate scumbag with a
Superior job.
Texan accent, surprisingly, like a strange Texan
Yeah,
accent.
it's a weird southern uh yeah, like big wig corporate magnate drawl.
Yeah, and it was interesting because the last movie I had actually seen him in was Leon the Professional. So I don't think, I think there was that was the last one I had seen him in. I know he's done movies between, but for me it was like I went from seeing him in Leon the Professional, where he's the corrupt cop that's doing all the coke, to now the corrupt corporate scumbag.
Dude, I can never get enough of Oldman. I mean, he's one of my favorite actors. I
He
just love watching
and
him.
I'm just throwing this out there. Earlier, I was talking to you about my love for Black Ops, Call of Duty Black
Yes.
Ops. He is one of the major characters. Like Gary Oldman
Oh,
himself voiced Reznov in both World at War and Black Ops One.
all right, all right, okay. I'm getting more sold. Yeah,
So anyway, so we got Gary Oldman in there, and then
then we
they
meet our
blow up.
hero.
Right? They blow up. That ship. The humans, we salvage it, and we find a case with a glove and part of a bone, and we have this awesome future tech machine that molecularly reassembles this being, and this being is the most perfect being that has ever been made, and that is our heroine,
Hmm.
uh, played by uh, Mila Jovovich.
Do you think that she's supposed to be divine when they talk about the perfect being? Are we? I mean, is there just like the slight bit of, um,
Like a god.
yeah? I mean, maybe not quite, but kind of. I mean, the perfect being, and like she can stop giant evils. I mean, she's not just a standard
I would,
person.
yeah, I don't know if they were tapping into something that was supposed to be more like of reference to like the angels.
Oh, okay, sure.
Um, she doesn't seem, I don't see her as like a god. Maybe, yeah, something more like Thor,
Uh-huh.
maybe a demigod, like a
Okay,
god that could die, but not a true god that's like theologically bigger than anything like the
okay.
evil is. Um,
Because those themes are real big in this movie. Like
yeah,
like
yeah.
the Oldman, representing all these the corporate greed, and so much so that he's willing to sacrifice. That does he not
His entire
recognize? Yeah,
race.
everything,
Yeah.
everything. Like, dude, you can't spend money on an Earth that's gone. I don't know what your plan is, but oof.
Yeah, so they reassemble Mila Jovovich's character, who's Lilu, and she speaks a language which is a made-up language. It's loosely based on Latin, but it's actually something that Jean-Luc Besson actually created for the movie. He wanted it to be totally different, and he worked with Mila Jovovich to make it seamless, and that's probably how they ended up, falling
Getting it
in love
out.
for a bit. And they were together for a couple years during and after this. Anyway, she escapes the bio lab after she has a freak out, and she comes crashing into the flying taxi cab of one Corbin Dallas, um, who's played by Bruce Willis.
The
And
reluctant hero.
he's our reluctant hero. He was a major in some sort of special forces for the United Federal Territories, some kind of a badass, and he's retired as a taxi driver in a crappy apartment. And there's some great comedy bits where, and this is a reoccurring gag in the movie, where his mom calls and she's like a real what would you call, a real doting kind of mom that calls and harasses him on the phone,
Yeah,
like
all
you
about the
don't
guilt
love
trip.
me. Yeah, super
Yeah.
guilt trippy. uh and one of the things and at the time when this movie came out, this made me laugh hard. At the time I was a smoker, but the whole like 4 cigarettes a day, you're on your
Yeah.
way to quit gag, and the cigarettes at the time in the movie, they're a standard length cigarette, but 3/4 of it is a filter. There's only
Hmm.
like a quarter of it actually has tobacco, which is the opposite of cigarettes at the time in 1997. I don't know what they are now. I quit over 10 years ago. Um,
I took a note on that too. I thought that that cigarette machine was another little retro future thing. Like looking at that little dispenser was very retro future.
yeah,
You
it
know,
is. There's a lot of cool. There's a lot of analog tech. And I mean, to be fair, are we ever going to be able to predict future tech in a way that the future actually evolves? Maybe, I don't know, but there's definitely a lot of movies where we were setting it way in a future where we were still using a lot of really old analog tech, and so
yeah,
the tech itself fits with our theme
yeah,
100%. I mean, there's a scene later on where the scene where they're trying to fire missiles at the evil entity before they give up,
uh-huh,
and it's all CRT screens and
yeah.
like old like Amiga 128 computer graphics. Like, it's some old school. um the movie itself is mostly practical effects. They don't use a lot of CG. Hadn't quite blown up um at the time, even though Jurassic Park had already been out, but I think it was still very expensive. I think the first movie that got mainstream CG like popular was probably a tie between Matrix and the original Episode 1 Phantom Menace. Right,
Yeah.
that's when CG really started to hit movies, and that wouldn't happen for another 2 years.
I would guess that a lot of the ships in the film were still models, or
Yeah.
there was a lot of stuff that still looked like hand drawn. Like so it's not a lot of it looks still looked like matte paintings and things.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was still really good. And I mean, there's a point where that stuff looks better sometimes, or there's like
I
this
think they
nostalgic
used
feel to it.
Yeah, I think they used CG for the flying cars in the cities,
Oh,
just because there was a lot of them.
yeah, good
If
point.
you really pay attention to it, you can tell, because it's early CG. The cars all kind of fly like in these perfect squadrons. They don't.
They're all flat shaded and just like zero
No,
texture
just the
to
way
them.
they move. They're not all individual. It's like groups. It's like lines of
Oh,
them
I
all kind of
see.
flying together, kind of
Hmm.
like 16-bit parallax scrolling
Yeah.
video game graphics kind of a thing.
Huh.
Because that's just the tech that we had at the time. Um, let's see. So Lilu meets Dallas. He's our reluctant hero, and at first, the cops come, they pull him over, and they're trying to get the girl back. And at first, he's gonna let her go because he's trying to live a normal life.
Yeah.
I think that's all he was trying to do. And then he realizes she really needs help. She reads the like hunger feed the hungry children ad in the cab
Yeah.
that says please help, and that's she mimics it. She learns English really fast, so she says please help, and he feels sorry for it. And in a way you can see that's, I don't know if it's meant to be part of her charm, his, maybe she was his type, and he falls for her right away.
Hmm.
He falls head over heels for her. um he helps her out, and then they go and find, he finds um Vito Cornelius, Ian Holmes' character, who is the priest who's been passed down the information about the ultimate warrior that's going to defend Earth. And then, of course, we get involved with um, Zorg, and
Those scenes, I think, are those. Is that where they start cutting? They have some really great creative cuts between. He's looking for the stones. So not one, not two, but
yeah,
and then
four
she's laughing.
stones.
4 stones, and there's those really great creative kind of like cuts between where the audio kind of overlaps, and it's almost like the conversation is happening between the two of them, or that they're actually in the same scene together. I just really like that style. I don't know who invented it or who pioneered it, but I really
No,
enjoy
those
that.
those kind of interchanging cuts
Yeah,
between
because he opens
actors.
it up
Yeah.
and she's laughing. He opens up the case and she's like giggling because she knows it's empty. But I really enjoyed those. There's a couple different instances in the whole movie that of those cool cuts.
Hey, this is Charlie, Triple C, from Brevity Box, a new and interesting podcast from the Ruminations Radio Network. If you're a fan of podcasts, we have a lot of great content to offer. Come check out our diverse group of podcasts and hosts at ruminationsradionetwork.com.
So, they recognize her as the fifth element, and she says the stones weren't on the ship, and the Mondo Shawans informed the stones were entrusted to an alien opera singer, the diva.
The diva.
Yeah, I'm probably going to butcher this. Plava Laguna. And then Zorg manipulates the Mangalores. Those are those ugly guys.
Oh, Mangalores, yeah.
For failing to obtain the stones, and that's where he kills one of them. Right, with his crazy smart gun. And I feel like the guys that make the Borderlands games, for Borderlands 3, there's a couple guns by the Atlas Corp that function just like that gun. Your first bullet hits the target, and then you can run anywhere and pull the trigger, and all the other bullets go to that target because it's a smart weapon. When I was watching Fifth Element, I was like, oh man, this has got to be where the Borderlands guys got this from. So then the military comes to Dallas and tell him, we have a mission. We need you to go. And they rig a radio contest to get him on the show. And then it's funny because Cornelius comes by Dallas's apartment and knocks him out, steals the tickets. And there's a whole comedic scene where they're all trying to be Corbin Dallas, right?
Yeah,
David, Cornelius' apprentice, is trying to be Dallas. One of the Mangalores is trying to be Dallas, and it all goes to crap. But the real Dallas gets on the ship with Lilu, and that's where we meet Ruby Rod, who's played by Chris Tucker, and that's a great role. He was just kind of coming up at the time, and he's hilarious in the movie. He's like a weird future Prince Lenny Kravitz superstar, like the epitome of a megastar.
I was originally, like, I got to be honest, when I first saw it, I didn't like the character. He kind of drove me crazy. And as I got older, I really started to enjoy him more, which is kind of weird. You would have thought that at a younger age, like maybe I would have been more drawn to him. But the character got more and more just hilarious to me as time went on. And I don't remember where I saw this, heard this, or maybe someone else just mentioned it. But talk about something that's tied, or rather kind of like foreshadowed modern streaming and influencers. Like this guy's like constantly
Oh yeah, no,
broadcasting,
for sure.
right?
Yeah, because he's like, that's right. He's like narrating his
Yeah.
life and his scenes, and he's got fans that are like listening to it 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap! I think I sort of noticed that on this viewing, and that's maybe another. Speaking of Borderlands 3, that may be another influence on the designers of
That's
Borderlands
right.
3, because there's that whole aspect of that storyline too. That's crazy.
Yeah. You know,
Yeah,
Prince
yeah.
was supposed to do that role,
That makes sense. Was
or who
also,
they
I
approached him.
I
I
guess
guess.
Jamie Foxx was also
Oh,
approached to do
really?
that role too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think either of those guys would have been good, but man, Chris Tucker really, he
He
really
delivered.
nails that, dude. He does when he's like like that. Oh, dude. I think from the beginning, I was like, this character's hilarious. I mean, he's annoying, but he's
Oh,
hilarious.
yeah. So you're more in touch then with the comedy, because at first he was just annoying to me and he became hilarious to me.
Yeah.
But freaking brilliant. What a performance.
Yep. So, let's see. So they go on this giant cruise ship, and then during the cruise, the Mangalore attacks, and they kill the opera singer, but Dallas gets the stones from her body.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing thinking about Ruby Rod with his gun to the guy's head, and he's like,
Oh,
if
yes.
you move, shoot him.
Dallas, what am I supposed to do? Yeah, he's like so
Okay.
freaked out. Yeah, he doesn't even know what to do. Dude, you know what? We kind of jumped ahead, but there's a great scene early on when we first meet Dallas. He's in his apartment. He's just trying to go to work.
Yeah.
And he goes to open his door. He looks at the
Oh,
window,
dude.
and he opens the door, and then all of a sudden the image flips, and it's like a guy wearing a hat that looks just like his hallway, like a fake image, and the guy's trying to rob him at gunpoint, and he's obviously a new criminal, and Corbin Dallas isn't even worried about it. He's telling the guy, he's like, yeah, you gotta let go of the safety button, you gotta push this button. And the guy's like in the cold sweat, he's like, no, give me your money, and then he pulls the gun away from the guy, and this little bin drops down in his apartment, and he's got piles and piles of firearms. Like,
Yeah.
it's absurd. And he just throws a pile in there and sends the kid on his way. But there's a lot of throwaway gags like that in the movie. And I think a lot of that comes from the heavy metal or metal hurlant
Yeah.
comic influence. But so there's a scene, I was just saying that because it's later on, obviously Corbin Dallas he's not scared of anything or those guys at all.
No.
But Lilu gets wounded during that whole escapade, and Dallas has to go look for her. When he finds her, she's wounded, and meanwhile they're trying to get to Earth because now the imminent evil is coming to Earth, and we have limited time to stop it. And we get the stones to the temple. It's in a pyramid on Earth, the same one that we saw in the beginning of the movie that was in 1914. And first they have to figure out the puzzle of the stones. They figure that out. They have to make wind for the wind stone, fire for the fire stone, water for the water stone, and dirt for the earth stone. And then our final element, the fifth element, is Lilu herself, but she's like in shock. She's like in a PTSD sort of state. And the line that she says this is like the big theme of the movie. And this is to me why this movie is retro future. And she talks about, why should I save you when you are always killing each other? When basically, I'm trying to find the exact, I thought I had it in my notes, her exact quotes. She's hesitant to save us, and she says, why should I save you when all you do is blow each other up? When she's learning English, there's that scene where she's going through the alphabet and she hits W, and she hits the word war, and boom, you just see pictures of World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, and then they added in some other Cold War era pictures and just tons of pictures of war.
And then she sees that mushroom cloud, I think is like the
right.
Like really seals the deal.
Yeah. That really freaks her out.
So a lot of those retrofuturist messages are scattered throughout, like even in the spaceport. There, it looks like there's like just garbage everywhere, like but it's like kind of sort of contained. The city where Corbin lives is like
A huge
huge and
sprawling
sprawling.
metropolis that's like New York on steroids. It's very much like like Los Angeles and Blade Runner. It's a
Yeah,
huge sprawling city with tons of flying cars, or
the further
Coruscant from Star
yes,
Wars Episode
yes.
2.
The further down you go into the city, like when you
The
drop out of
dirtier it
Raging,
is.
dirtier and grosser it is.
Right.
Yeah, all that stuff is just really like right on Front Street. And one of the things I noticed, and this might be just my like projecting a little bit, is which is kind of retroing, which is now, especially in light of like our more progressive minds now, but all of um, the service women look kind of like anyone who's like in like that position. They all look like bombshell dressed, like from like the 30s 40s, like bombshells, like the McDonald's outfits, the stewardess outfits. And I don't know whether that was him not recognize, whether he was like paying homage to those old fashioned views, or whether I'm not sure, but it kind of stood
Yeah.
out. Now I was like, wow, that's
Right.
really not very progressive, like seeing all these people dressed like that. But I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to ask him, because I mean, he was raised a lot like in the olden days, and those older comics would have been kind of projecting that. So maybe he didn't even realize he was putting that kind of thing in there. But it was progressive in the fact that we had a black president of the galaxy. That was pretty impressive.
Who was
Like,
played by a wrestler.
yeah, like, but I mean, that's pretty ahead of its time stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a female lead. Yeah, I mean, we had Bruce
That it saved the
Willis
world.
as the lead, but Mila Jovovich was really the lead hero
Yeah.
character of the film. She really steals the spotlight. I think had not Bruce Willis been in the movie, it may not have been viewed by as many people in the
Mm,
United States.
yeah.
I know there were a few other people that were in that were supposed to be Corbin Dallas. I mean, Bruce Willis was one of the first ones, and he passed on it initially,
Oh,
and then they were going to get some other people, and then later on,
I think Mad Max was on the table.
yeah, Mel Gibson, and that
Hmm.
would have been. I don't know if that would have worked. There's a
I don't think he could deliver the comedy the same way.
there's right. I was gonna say there's a charm, and there's a almost like holistic charm to Bruce Willis that you can believe that from him, like that he just comes across as like a really like all-American kind of guy.
Blue collar dude.
Yeah, he just
You
really
know,
has that working for him in a way that I don't know if I would have bought with Mel Gibson as
yeah,
much. It may be colored from Mad Max, Lethal
yeah,
Weapon. At the time, Bruce Willis had just transitioned into film from doing TV series, so
yeah,
he was not as not as colored by that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And you, I mean, you had Die Hard. He was, I mean,
Still riding high off the Die Hard dollars.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was the all American. Jack. Anybody could be John McClane, really. They were a well trained cop that cared for their family.
yeah,
I think that worked to his advantage for that character that we can all sort of relate. And he didn't come off as super macho or machismo or
yeah.
like even like a super tough action hero of the time, like Stallone
Yeah.
or any of Arnold's characters from that time period. Like it was a very European style hero.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it worked in a way that I don't know if any other actor, other than maybe an unknown or, um, yeah, I think they really like he just nails that part in a way that I'm not sure that anybody else could have done as well as he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. I didn't mean to derail you from the climax of the film though,
Oh,
because
right.
yeah, you
So
get all those elements together, and then
we get the elements.
perfect.
We've got Dallas. We've got Lilu. She's wounded, and she gives us what's the use of saving life when you see what you do with it line.
Yes.
And, he says, but I need you. I love you. And he kisses her. And all of a sudden, the fifth element really for all means and purpose is love. That's what
Mm-hmm.
the fifth element is. And it's an undying kind of love. It's the kind of love that mothers have for their children, that that we should all have for taking care of each other, and that's
Yeah.
what stops this evil thing. And
That's
then
a
there's
good
a great
message.
comedy segue later where the president wants to thank them, and they're back in that medical facility where Lily was first rebuilt, and the doctor's like, well, let me see, and he opens it up and they're making love in there. He's like, oh, they need about 5 minutes. And then again, Corbin Dallas's mom calls and
Yeah.
talks, and the president wants to talk to her, and she's like, you don't sound anything like him. You're too now, he's an idiot, blah blah blah. And she's like going off, and he just hands the phone to somebody else, and they hand the phone to somebody else, and they hand the phone to somebody else. One of the other cool things that I forgot is the actor that played Leon from Blade Runner is
Mm-hmm.
one of the military majors in Fifth Element. He's like the NCO that comes for Dallas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
it was
get put
just
in the fridge.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That whole gag was great.
Oh. At first, it was multiple viewings where I forgot, like, because at first I was like, oh, he's dead. He just froze this little group that came to pick him up, but then you see them later in the film, like, oh, okay, they're okay, they're all right.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, I mean, so that's our story of the movie, and then, um, I guess getting into Luc Besson's ideas and inspirations. I guess he was 16 when he wrote the original story, which is quite different. Um, he was 38 when the film opened. I think
Mm-hmm.
like when he was 35 is when they started working on it. But he got some of the guys that worked on the Metal Hurlant heavy metal magazine in France to do the art. One of them is one of my favorite artists, Jean Mobius Giraud,
Mm-hmm.
and then Jean Claude. I'm gonna mess this up. I can't even say this. I'm gonna say it, but I know it's not right.
Okay.
Mezières, not sure. Um, and then the costume designs were another. This was almost an entire French production. The cinematographer was
Mm-hmm.
French. Luc Besson was French. It was the biggest European movie for like 20 years. Some
What?
action comedy dethroned it a few years back, but
Huh.
yeah. And like we talked about earlier, it's just a really fun movie.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like that spoonful of sugar that helps medicine go down. Like if you want to just enjoy it on the surface of just being a sci-fi explosive, um, flick and a fun romp, it is. But there are some really strong messages in there. And I don't think he's delivering them heavy-handedly or in any way that's like kind of like preachy. But there's some message there.
yeah, it was definitely at the time noted for exploring the themes of political corruption,
Mm-hmm.
um, by a few filmmakers, and the story of just love conquers all. That it reminded me of one of my favorite quotes from Jimi Hendrix. He says, "And the power of love is greater than the love of power."
Yes, it's a great quote.
You know, um, I think about that quote all the time. And you and I we've got some notes from our Discord discussion. Um, the flying cars were very retro style. And I think some of that, coming back to your discussion about the female outfits,
Uh-huh.
I think that was maybe almost intentionally a very 50s, 40s and 50s style thing. Cause even the cars, the cop cars, and even his taxi, they were like
Yeah,
very 40s, late 40s, early 50s style cars, but they were flying cars,
but they flew.
right?
Yeah.
And the ship they fly in into space was a very like 40s, almost like the style that George Lucas used for the prequel movies for the planes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That 40s like silver tone,
Uh-huh.
because that's the tech we had at the time. But it makes for a lot of fun, and that's why I feel like The Fifth Element is a retro futurist movie. It is definitely inspired in retro futurist ways, and this story about that we should love each other and not blow each other to kingdom come is the main theme of the movie. I
Yeah.
mean,
And that Bruce Willis is an incredible kisser. I think
I'm gonna.
I'm gonna walk away
I've
with
never
that.
kissed him personally, Mitch. I'm gonna take your word for that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, that's with Lilu in the
That
middle.
kiss at the end's pretty. It's pretty good.
kiss.
And that's very. That's funny you said. That's a very like almost like Casablanca kind
Right?
of ending that they pull there.
Even with the freeze frame, kind of, it does have like
yeah.
a retro
I didn't
vibe.
even think of that until you brought that up. Yeah. But yeah, and then we've got Gary Oldman's Zorg. He's the corporate bastard that just he has all the money but he needs more, so he's
Yeah.
gonna screw over everybody to
And
get
he-
more money for what? Like, and I mean, honestly, sometimes when I look at the news, that's what runs through my head. Why
Why?
the fuck, why what do you need all this money for?
I think one of the greatest messages there too is when he chokes on the cherry. It's like, you've got all the power, you've got all this money, but just this little thing, and you can die. You
Yeah.
aren't more powerful than death. This little thing could bring an end to you. A cherry
Life
is fragile.
is precious,
Precious.
and the littlest thing can take you out in a minute. And so I feel like it's better to live a life where you respect people, you're kind to people,
Yeah.
share your passions with people. You're not tearing down people, and
Build, don't destroy.
build people up. Yeah, and that's one of the things I like of this movie. It's a fun movie to watch. It's just a great romp. And if you've listened this far and you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, we've just spoiled everything. But you should go watch the movie anyway because it's a hell of a good time.
So quotable. I can't.
I just
there's
looked
like
it
a
up.
week that goes by.
It's streaming on Hulu right now.
Oh,
So if you
cool.
have Hulu, it's on there. If you don't have Hulu, I recommend picking up the newer 4K disc with the Atmos soundtrack. And if you can't find that, the second version Blu-ray that has the Dolby True HD has just as good of a soundtrack. It's just not an Atmos. Yeah, man. You got anything else you wanted to throw out about
I just
the
wanted
Fifth
to,
Element?
I just wanted to ask you real quick, because it's one of those revelations that it came to later, kind of like the Indiana Jones revelation in Raiders. Like, oh, Indy doesn't really impact the outcome of the story, and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty heavy. But in this one, I didn't realize until later that the heroes don't, or I guess Mila does, but Bruce Willis never crosses paths with Zorg. They never
No,
meet.
yeah, and exactly. It's hilarious. I forgot all about that because they're trying to get out of the cruise ship. Zorg he had planted his bomb earlier. He goes and disarms it. He's trying to find the stones because he thought he had the stones in the case, but he didn't, and he's all pissed off. And the cruise liner's going to blow up, and Dallas and Lilu,
Great.
they're escaping with the priest, and they find a ship in the hangar, and it's Zorg's ship. They steal his ship, and Dallas, being ex-special forces,
Of course, he can fly it.
knows how to fly it, and they fly away, and all of a sudden Zorg, he screwed over the evil aliens so much that they pulled a bomb and blew up the whole thing and killed Zorg with them. Yeah.
Good.
So his
stuff.
own greed killed him
Yeah.
in the end. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, they don't actually ever cross paths in the movie. I mean, and honestly, Dallas doesn't do all that much as far as he takes out a few guys in the opera scene or right after that opera scene, and that's about it. Like he doesn't.
He does some good negotiating.
Yeah, he does some good
Does
negotiating.
anybody else want to negotiate?
Yeah, I mean, most of his action scenes are flying the vehicle,
Yeah.
delivering some great one-liners. Yeah, that's great. I forgot all about that.
Man. But yeah, fun time, man.
There's a lot of little comedy bits that run through the movie. I still feel like it's a 2 hour movie, and there's a couple parts I feel like you could probably cut 10 minutes out of the movie and make it a little leaner.
Yeah.
Little lean. There's a couple meandering bits that I feel like, but that being said, in its current state, it's a great viewing, and there's a lot to take in there, and it's definitely a lot of fun. It visually still holds up really well. The movies that were made with pure practical effects, the lighting still holds up so well. I mean, there's a couple bits, even for the time, I think there were a couple bits you can tell that some of the costumes were a little low budget, but I almost think that was part of the shtick.
Yeah.
I really feel like he almost was going for that a little bit, because, but it's still, I still feel like it holds up really well, and it's a lot of fun, and it's visually very representative of its inspired source of the French metal hurlant, what was translated as the heavy metal magazines here in the United States, which was later owned in the U.S. by Kevin Eastman, who co-created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics.
Whoa. Fact of the episode.
I have a bunch of useless data in my head, so sometimes I got to spit it out.
Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm so glad you came on so we could talk about this movie. It's a lot of fun, and I think the theme fits our retro future. And I was really glad that you brought it up, because honestly, this wasn't even really on my radar for early episodes. But when you said it, I was like, oh yes, dude, that's perfect. This is great.
Well, thanks for doing it, man. Thanks for having me on. I think that the film has good messages, especially for the world we're living in right now. Love, man. Be
That's
kind
what
to
we
each
need.
other. Be kind.
Yeah.
Be good.
Yeah, I think, and especially right now, the world is we're on like a tight wire. I feel like at any moment we could shift into something like World War II. I feel like that's how I feel like it is right now. It's kind of scary. But let's not end it on that note. Let's end it on the note of good friends, good beverages.
Yes.
Good fun with the speaking of retro future, we're probably going to do a crossover episode with the Ruminations Radio Network about the newly released Cyberpunk 2077 game. That's going to be a Ruminations Radio Network crossover episode.
Awesome. I can't wait.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Retro Futurist podcast. Thank you to my guest tonight, the wonderful, illustrious, magnificent Cyber Mitch. He is quite the gentleman and the scholar, and I look forward to every conversation I have with this guy. He has taught me more than he'll probably ever know about how to be a cool person. Retro Futurist culture is riding out. Looking forward to talking to you guys more in future episodes. We're going to get into some more cyberpunk topics, including the game, but we're also going to be exploring some stuff. I got an anime-themed episode coming up soon about the classic cyberpunk anime. It rhymes with most and Mel's, and you're going to want to make sure you check out that episode when it goes live. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
And make sure you check out other episodes on the Ruminations Radio Network. We got tons of great content coming. It's a good time. Check us out. Peace.